You're listening to A Radio.
To be politically correct just takes too much time. We have to get things done in this country, and you're never going to get it done if we just stay politically correct.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is The Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. This piece is entitled Political Correctness is No Longer Funny. That's the title the piece is actually given, and I thought it was an appropriate title, so that's what I'm going to call my piece. Now, this piece is to highlight one of my pet peeves, that of political correctness, which is to my mind nothing more and nothing less than at best a sneaky way to get around the United States Constitution and its First Amendment. For the rest of us, it's just an openly and blatant attack on every citizen's right to free speech, using fancy words where two will do, renaming things that have no need to be renamed, all in the interests of so-called political correctness. So I give you Exhibit 1. Listen to this clip from Fox News. Ah, no, it's not that one. You know, the one with Fox Nation that lives in New York City? No, it's not that one. This one comes from Australia. Well, actually, to be deadly accurate, it's not Fox News at all. It's what they call Sky News. Well, actually, I think they're part of Fox News. I may be wrong, but they certainly used to be in England. And they certainly act as though they're part of Fox. And they sound an awful lot like how Fox News USA used to sound. You know, when Bill O'Reilly was there? Here's the piece, and you tell me if you don't long for these days.
Well, it's no secret that over the past decade our lives have been plagued by the growing disease of political correctness, propagated by the radical left, but so insidious there's hardly an aspect of life now not impacted by the PC gods. I might have to say here, that's my initials, PC, and my God, I'm upset that my initials are PC, but worse than that, my name, Peter, P-E-T-A, has been taken over by the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, so that also gets under my goat, if I can have a goat anymore. But in a recent survey by the ABC, of all people, 68% of participants agreed that political correctness, they say, had gone too far. Now, if that's what the ABC is telling us, then it's really out of control. Dr. Kevin Donnelly, a regular here on Credlin, has had enough. A little while ago, he decided to tackle this issue head on. The result is his new book, his latest book. He's a long-time author. It's called A Politically Correct Dictionary. And I'm very much looking forward to formally launching it in Sydney on Monday. Ahead of then, I've asked Kevin to come on the show and tell us all about it. I have to tell you, you know, it breaks... Well, I love the fact that we have got this dictionary because it does, in one volume, show how mad this madness has become, how widespread, how it touches, you know, most aspects of our lives. But it breaks my heart that we even have to have a book like this in the first place. You know, what motivated you to write this book?
Well, about 25 years ago, I was in America and went to a number of think tank conferences, and there was a book published back then, the official Politically Correct Dictionary, which I bought, came back to Australia, read it, and it was quite humorous in many ways about if you're short, you're vertically challenged, or if you're an alcoholic, you're a substance abuse survivor. And you can't say manhole, it's a personnel access structure. And it kind of went on. And it reminded me of when I was at university at La Trobe, one of the funniest, I thought, examples of graffiti was land rights for gay whales.
Yes.
And we used to laugh about that.
Yeah.
But then I started to read a bit more about Australia and see what was happening. And this was a time when Geoffrey Blaney, I think our most eminent historian, a marvellous historian, he was actually run out of Melbourne University, as you know, for daring to question the rate of Asian immigration. Fred Hollows, who has done, when he was alive, marvellous work with Indigenous people and Third World in terms of eye treatment, cataracts, etc. He, at the time, and this is over 30 years ago, 25 years ago, dared to say that AIDS was associated with gay people and gay lifestyle. So he was vilified and attacked. So when I started to think, well, this is actually happening in Australia, and it's no longer funny.
No.
And you only have to look at Bill Leake last year, who did that marvellous cartoon for The Australian, who was threatened with 18C. You only have to look at those 3 students from Queensland who, for daring to say that can't we use a computer centre that's supposedly just for Aboriginal people, they complained about that in a light-hearted way, and they were threatened with 18C. So there are examples now. Margaret Court, because she was against same-sex marriage, she was vilified, and the argument was they should take her name off Centre Court. And just finally, this whole idea of Sydney University saying that you should unlearn. So you don't go to university now to learn about liberalism or history or literature or mathematics and science. They actually say you've got to unlearn because you have to know more about, you have to be woke and know about multiculturalism, refugees, Indigenous oppression and all the rest of it. So it's a serious business that was humorous some years ago, but now I'm afraid it's actually a form of cultural left, groupthink, and the destruction of language, as George Orwell appreciated in 1984.
So I've always had the view, and look, this is a political campaigner in me, but language matters. And the left, I have to say, are quicker off the mark in terms of framing the debate with language. We saw same-sex marriage very quickly become marriage equality. There are countless other examples. And in the past, we've always relied on what I'd call the common sense and sound education that most Australians had, and the fact that when they went home and spoke to their parents about these sorts of issues, some of the push out of the left-wing teacher class was moderated. I don't have that same confidence going forward because the people who are teaching our kids are the ones that were the first round of indoctrinated young people. And when they go home to speak to their parents are now, more than not, often on the same page. And you rely on grandparents, I think, now to inject some reality. Now, a lot of grandparents say to me, I spoke at a Jewish event in Melbourne recently, how upset they are that their grandchildren are voting Green when the Greens don't recognise Israel or have issues with Israel and are certainly, in many respects, some candidates in particular, anti-Semitic. And I said, well, if you can't speak to grandchildren on these issues, who can? But we've become so scared of debate in this country. What this dictionary does, Kevin, it enables people who want Australia to still be fair and reasonable and robust in debate to enter the debate and throw back some of the language of the left at them. And it demystifies how insidious and invidious this process is.
Well, I mentioned George Orwell, and as you know, he had first-hand experience of communism, and he was alive at a time of Stalin and Hitler, fascism. A lot of young people are no longer taught about that period of history, and that's a part of the problem. Very few young people know about Mao and the Cultural Revolution and the Long March and the millions that died because of starvation in prison and murder. But when you look at what Orwell was talking about, and you're dead right, I taught English for many years, it's about language. And Orwell says, in fact, in one of his essays, he's writing about the power of language, that he's more scared of when you manipulate language than he was of being bombed when he was in the Civil War in Spain. Because if you can actually control how people think, and this is the whole point about Big Brother, you know, thought crime, that the minute you speak it, then you can't. You're in trouble. And that's the most frightening thing. It goes back to, and you're right, about universities and schools now, about the indoctrination. A lot of young people, and I've spoken to to you about this before, that a lot of young people can't understand why democracy is preferable to socialism, and a lot of young people are quite happy to base their conclusions on emotion. So a lot of it now is emotional, and Amelia might be watching, but I had a discussion with her about the whole same-sex marriage debate, and she kept saying to me, love is love. Dad, love is love. And I said to her, well, look, do you love your mother? She said, yes. Do you love our dog, Fabio? She said, yes. Do you love your boyfriend? Yes. Well, I said, aren't they all different kinds of love? And we started to talk about the fact that marriage might actually be something special. But because you have that, it was a brilliant marketing move.
And look, and it's nothing wrong with her then still maintaining that view after the discussion, because everyone's got to have their own opinion, but it's not enabling the discussion that really upsets me.
And the fact that it's more based on emotion.
Yeah.
And it's, somebody famous once said, I think, therefore I am. Now it's, I feel, therefore I am. And when you look at a lot of the sort of woke topics, whether it's the environment or Indigenous affairs or, the way a lot of people now don't want to eat meat or they're vegan, you get this idea that they're basing it not on fact or rational argument, but because they think it's quite groupthink, they have to go along with that.
Links, as always, on my site. So I'm going to give you a tip. It's a simple one. Listen to Rush Limbaugh. That's a good start. That will set you on your way. And maybe a sprinkle of Glenn Beck from time to time. And then you could listen to Mark Levin and maybe even Wayne Dupree. But if you want more in-depth and perhaps an unvarnished approach, you can come here for a splattering of facts and truth, gathered up and disseminated 3 times a week on a variety of topics, most often not even covered by the mainstream media. However, if you want even more detail, I suggest you try my good colleague who was responsible for starting a radio, that is Cold War Radio, which you can find on most platforms. They have the time to cover topics in great detail and often dig down into the weeds of the topics of the day, and more often than not, find things other outlets refuse to. Sometimes they go a little off track, but it's always informative. The most important thing to me and many others is the fact that they are not politically correct, and they just tell it how it is. So if you're a snowflake or planning to be one, I suggest you direct your eyes and the rest of you elsewhere. Don't forget, I did warn you. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, Spotify, and email. We're on Spotify under the podcast section. Type in Canadian Politics with a twist and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass these links on to your friends. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com/A-Radio, EHRADIO, A-Radio. And please click on the like button. Join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday at 11:45 Eastern, and tell your friends and pass the word. We only tell the truth, not what the mainstream media want you to know.